point. But with the red tires back on his car, will Justin be able to maintain a close gap between him and Sebastian and maybe attack later in this stint?
Yeah, exactly right. So it's a long way to go here in Portland. We've got 58 minutes down, 47 minutes to go in this race. There is our new race leader, Will Power. Will Power won the opening race of the season in Las Vegas. He's been a contender in every race so far this season, and he's been absolutely about a revelation, because he was just improving by leaps and bounds all the way through last year, was Will Power. But this year he's been absolutely superb. This was the first time he failed to qualify on the front row of the grid. He's had a good race so far, and now he's looking to make some ground again. There is Catherine Legg making her second pit stop of the day. She was showing inside the top 10 at this stage. She'd been running reasonably competitive at lap times with everybody else. Will Power is on pit lane. Cameron Steele is down.
Well, I'm here in Will Power's pit. Everything seems to be good with the car. I just spoke with Derek Walker, who was talking to Dave Faustino, the engineer. They're holding it. Look at that. Will wants to go. You hear Derek Walker telling him to hold on the radio. Will Power very antsy to get back out. They talked about a short fill, but it looked like they went ahead and filled the car up.
I don't think that was Will's fault. It sounded like he was just getting on the throttle to make sure that he was on the limiter and ready to go, but the clutch was grabbing just a little bit. The way that that car was creeping, it was creeping at too steady a pace with how sensitive these clutches are for him to have been lifting his foot there. So I think his clutch stop maybe not just set far enough. A little bit of a problem there, as we see Sebastian Bourdais trying to clear Catherine Legg of the lapped car.
She tucks in behind him now. I thought for a minute she was going to race him down towards the chicane. Let's have a replay again of that pass by Sebastian Bourdais. Justin Wilson, of course, he's only just come out of the pit, so his tyres are still cold. Sebastian Bourdais has done 3 or 4 laps to get his tyres up to optimum temperature. Here's a look back from the CDW car. There down to the inside goes Sebastian Bourdais, and absolutely nothing that Justin Wilson could do about it, James.
He did make him go hard, though, because Sebastian had to go very late on the brakes, and you saw he actually slid wide, clipped that second apex curb there on the left-hand part of that corner, which is not ideally what you want to do. So Justin made him work for it, but at that point there really was nothing he could do. He just had to sit back and watch.
So now we're into the meat of the race, if you like, and Sebastian Bourdais, he's made up that massive deficit, and here he is now out in the lead. He's got some lap cars, or about to be lap cars, ahead of him. I think next ahead of him again is Neil Gianni, who is in 14th place now in the Red Bull PKV car. Boy, Neil Gianni has been disappointing this season. It was thought primarily that he seemed to be struggling in qualifying, but he's not had a particularly good race today either. Just hasn't shown the pace that was expected of him, and he's down in 14th place, and his teammate Tristan Gomedy up inside the top 5, where he's been all weekend.
Yeah, he really just has genuinely had the pace all weekend long. This is not trick race strategy or anything of the sort, as Sebastian Bourdais gets very close. But Neil Gianni courteously pulls over and lets the race leader go by. But yeah, Tristan Gomedy absolutely on fire for PKV Racing, where as his teammate, who we are on board with now, just really has struggled with this Portland circuit.
He's turning into the corners a lot sooner, isn't he, than Sebastian Bourdais? Bourdais taking a much wider line into the corners.
There's a few different lines around the Portland track with these really long duration corners. Sometimes an earlier turn in can definitely help you because the corner's banked. And traditionally, when you have a banked corner, you're able to roll speed in, turn in a little bit earlier, and still manage to carry good minimum speed in the corner. Sebastian Bourdais, obviously a bit of a different driving style and a bit of a different setup on his car, no doubt, to suit that better. And obviously at this point of the race, it seems like his might be a little bit quicker. So Sebastian Bourdais now leading Justin Wilson by a pretty significant margin, considering he only got by a few laps ago. The gap is now up to 2.7 seconds. They're running lap times about 3 or 4 tenths apart in Sebastian's favor at this point, but now Justin's going to have to clear Neil Gianni as well.
So here's a look at the pole sitter since 1992 here in Portland. It's interesting reading. Look at this. It's been a different pole sitter every year for 15 years, and some of the great names of world motorsport, not just the Champ Car World Series, and all the way down here to 2005, 2006. Bruno Junqueira took the pole here last year. This time, finally, after all that time, Justin Wilson becomes the first man to become a 2-time pole sitter at Portland International Raceway in 15 years. Remarkable effort. But that was yesterday that Justin Wilson secured his pole position when the track was wet, and this is now on board the CDW car of the Englishman. He's running now, however, in second place, and he's having to watch as Sébastien Bourdais extends that lead little by little. That time around, another half a second that Bourdais builds onto his lead over Justin Wilson. It's now over 3 seconds, as we see there. Is that Nurjani again pulling over to let Justin Wilson pass? And Justin Wilson now has at least clear track, I believe. Or is that it might be Oral Servia, the next car ahead of him, but you can see the deficit now to Sébastien Bourdais is 3 seconds plus, and if you even talked about that just 25 laps or so ago, you just say, what? No mistakes from Justin Wilson, just hasn't had the speed, particularly in that second stint of the race. We'll have to see now. His car should be getting up to temperature now, but he's still only lapping in the 60.5 at last time around. He is on the softer tyres, and Sébastien Bourdais, I think, is still on the black sidewall tyres in this third stint of the race, and he turned a 60.035. Simon Pagenaud is the quickest man on the field at the moment.
We're seeing a replay here of Graham Rahal, who's trying to get by Dan Clark.
Whoa.
Oh, that is at 165, 170 miles an hour. He's just put 2 wheels on the grass and brought it back. That would have been a scary, scary moment for Graham Rahal, and very, very poor, uncourteous, unsportsmanlike driving from Dan Clark. I have to say, blocking is not allowed in the Champ Car World Series, and although that straightaway does have a bit of a curve to it, that was just, I think that was a little bit off, to be honest.
You'd generally be in the sort of the middle of the racetrack there, but there's room to go around the outside of somebody as well, isn't there?
Yeah, if you're on the 100% traditional race line that you run every lap, there was definitely at least 1 car width to the outside there. So based solely on the fact that Graham was put off into the dirt, you know, Dan obviously made a mistake coming out of turn 7, and Graham got a good run on him. So that'll I imagine be under review by Champ Car. Tony Cotman, of course, the race director up in race control, will be looking at that closely, reviewing that, see if a penalty is to be issued. But Sébastien Bourdais still out in front now, back into the 59s. Justin Wilson's last lap was a 60.1. So again, about a 4/10 of a second a lap deficit Justin has, and the gap is now up to 4.3 seconds. This for me, Jeremy, has kind of been a typical Sébastien Bourdais display. He didn't have the quickest car in qualifying. He fell back early stages in the race, but between great pit calls and just heads-up driving from him, he's put himself back in the lead of this motor race, and comfortably.
Yeah, the key was to keep calm, and at one stage we wondered whether he was keeping his cool. He was held up, he got a bit frustrated trying to get past a lapped car, but he's kept it all together. He's turned an incredibly fast pace, and once the strategy plus good driving got him out into that clear second place, he was able to take advantage of that, and then you just you know, gradually get closer and closer and closer to Justin Wilson, and finally make that pass for the lead. And now Sébastien Bourdais is pulling away.
Yahoo and Eurosport, the new online sport experience featuring extensive coverage of all sports, the live box, the scoreboard of your favourite sporting events, a running feed on breaking sports news, and the video player to watch exciting highlights, interviews and live streaming. Eurosport.yahoo.com. Be a better sports fan.
We'll get back to him in just a moment here at Portland. It's a warm welcome to Slovenian Olympian Andrej German, who's this year's World Cup men's downhill champion. Andrej, great of you to join us. I know you were at Monte Carlo a couple of weeks ago watching a Formula 1 race. This is your first time at a Champ Car race. What do you think?
Well, there is some sort of difference, you know. It's I gotta say that Formula 1 is much more glamorous than Champ race, and I think it's also that much more money is involved in Formula 1 than in Champ Car.
Yes, about 20 times as much money, probably. But it's an exciting form of competition. What brings you here to the Pacific Northwest?
I came here for training at Mount Hood, so now my head coach was inviting me to join the race team, and it's a nice experience for me also.
Now, you've been hanging out with the Pacific Coast Motorsports team. They're the only West Coast team based in the Champ Car World Series this year, and there's a lot of friendly characters down there. You've been having a good time though, have you?
I'm having a good time, yeah. I can see how downhill racing and car racing are pretty much similar. It's everybody's living on a limit, and that's really nice to compare those two sports.
We've seen a lot of skiing world champions make a move into car racing at some stage. The Mayer brothers, Steve and Phil Mayer, they're still dabbling in motor racing over here. They do the showroom stock series at the moment, and Franz Klammer, of course, he made a bit of a splash in the DTM series in Europe. Any plans for you to move into motor racing?
I don't think so. I'll stick for a few more years in ski racing, and I probably. I mean, it's too much. It's too much. I mean, you have a good sponsors to get in, and it's really tough to get into motorsports.
Yeah, it certainly is. Andre, thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your stay.
Thank you, you too.
So there is back on a look at the McDonald's car, Newman Haas Lanigan Racing. Sebastian Bourdais is extending the lead, but not by certainly as much as he was before. The gap between first and second, 4.5 seconds, James. It seems to have stabilized now. Yeah,
their lap times now are pretty similar. Actually, all of the top 5 seem to be within about 2 or 3 tenths of one another. Sebastian Bourdais actually just did a pretty quick lap, and as Justin Wilson comes by, yeah, the gap up now to just about 5 seconds even. So maybe Sebastian a bit of a mistake on that lap, but we're back on board with Graham Rahal now as he starts heading out of turn 7 up the back straight, and it does not appear as though Champ Car made any kind of ruling on that incident between him and Dan Clark, which kind of surprises me a little bit. He's still chasing that car down right now, obviously not as close as he was. Dan must have made a mistake for him to get that run that he did into turn 10, but he's still trucking away, and he's got the pace as we actually are taking a look at Tony Kottman right now.
Obviously a little more.
That was Tony Kottman up in race control there. Maybe as we're on board with Graham, maybe there is some sort of ruling coming in this incident, but he's certainly got more pace than Dan Clark, and he must be frustrated just sitting behind him, especially after what Dan's done to him.
Yes, indeed, and there's certainly, I think, a question mark went up from Newman Haas Lanigan Racing to race control. We're trying to find a word on what the edict.
Great job, and I think it just adds such a great spectacle for the fans, and mixed everybody up going into turn 1. So you know, 1 down anyway.
As our race director Tony Kottman talking about the standing start that we saw earlier on today, and certainly that was, I think, a great feature that's added a lot of interest to the series. A lot of, you know, they wanted to introduce it at the beginning of the season, and they quickly realised with this brand new car, there's quite a few mechanical aspects of the car they needed to address. The tilt and carbon clutches on these cars, they've been beefed up a little bit over the last few weeks while they develop, through the developmental phase. And I have to say, it was not only spectacular but exciting as well.
He's perhaps just defending his line. He didn't move his line too far. He knows he's not going to do it again, so he's doing fine. He's racing and he wants to keep that position and go forward.
Right, difference of opinion is what makes a horse race.
Whoa, there's Graham Rahal oversteps the mark there off the road. He's going to lose a lot of time here, James. That grass is still wet.
It's still very wet, but he's managed to keep it off the wall. He's trying hard. You cannot get the power down at all on the grass. So back now on track. He's going to have very dirty, slightly wet tires now. He's going to have to be very careful these next few corners, just kind of tiptoe, get himself back up to speed there. But looks like he just overcooked it into turn 4 there. Very easy to do.
And just before Rahal went off the road, the interview we had there was Bill Stevens with Will Phillips, who's a race engineer for Dan Clark.
Are your tires okay, Graham?
Yes, there's the team asking whether Graham's tires are okay. That's
you could see Graham on his radio there responding just before he entered turn 10 there. Yep. And I think the tires would be all right. He did not spin. There's no chance to flat spot the tires there. So apart from being maybe a little bit moist, having a little bit of grass on them, they'll be back up to speed in no time.
I think he actually just lost the 1 position to Simon Pagenaud, but that's the good news. The bad news is he lost about 10 seconds by sliding off the road. So there's Tristan Gomandy, that's just doing an excellent job for the PKV racing team. Jimmy Vasser, of course, one of the team owners there, along with Kevin Kalkoven. And Tristan Gomandy, he's been, I have to say, a revelation this weekend. He's led, of course, the last couple of races, but that was really just on strategic calls to get Gomandy out in front and getting used to running out in front. Of course, they ran him out of fuel at Houston, which wasn't the smartest move. Go down to Michelle Beisner with Jimmy Vasser.
Well, I'm here with team owner Jimmy Vasser. Jimmy, Tristan's been running well all day, but what's it going to take for him to catch the leader?
No, we're running a race kind of with Tagliani now, and we're trying to catch up with Dornbos, but we just don't have the pace. But Tristan's been running a good race, and it's it's pretty straightforward with no yellows like it is, and we're just trying to set pace and maintain 5th place as best we can do, I think, unless there's a yellow and kind of bunches up.
much did the rain go into your strategy planning yesterday?
Well, it makes it hard to move the